Young Boys Incorporated, also known as YBI, was a major drug organization in Detroit, Michigan, who were among the first African American drug cartels to operate on inner city street corners. The Young Boys were innovative, opening franchises in the other cities, promoting brand names, and unleashing extreme brutality to frighten away rivals. YBI emerged at the end of the 1970s. Their modus operandi was using minors to be couriers of heroin. If police captured them, they were ineligible to receive the same criminal penalties as adults because of their juvenile status. Meanwhile, the leaders, adults aged in their late teens and very early 20s, remained largely insulated from law enforcement action for many years. In 1976, the group was formed by a bunch of Detroit neighborhood friends, all in their late teens, at Bernie Elementary School's playground. Dwayne Davis, aka Wonderful Wayne, Bernard Boykins, aka Bone Man, Reginald Chestnut, aka Nut, and Charles Lindsay, aka Chosey Chuck, were the original founders at the time. Shortly after the formation of YBI, a man from the same neighborhood named Raymond Peoples, aka Baby Ray, joined and become a boss. 2 years later, Birch Jones, aka Big Boy, was paroled from prison and joined the organization, becoming a boss and started his own family. It was about this time that YBI split into 3 separate crews: Dwayne Davis, Remain Peoples, and Butch Jones. They controlled about 80% of the heroin traffic in Detroit from the summer of 1978 through 1987. 3 leaders were responsible for sourcing the group's heroin from the Golden Triangle, the border of Laos, Thailand, and Myanmar. The name Young Boys Incorporated lent itself to the idea that this group was like a company. When it came to the actual organization of the gang, Butch Jones was largely responsible. From the start, YBI's main place of operation was the Dexter and Davison neighborhood on Detroit's northwest side. About 2 years after its formation, YBI completely took over the heroin trade in and around Detroit, with sales estimated at $300,000 per day. After the split, Davis sent one of his top lieutenants to Boston to expand his operation. After about a year, the crew, along with new members from Boston, took over most of that city's heroin trade. Sales peaked in Boston at about $70,000 per day. In the newspapers, the group was seen as highly effective because of its structure as a vertically integrated system. Its setup was described as a military-like organization, chart for narcotics conspiracy by federal agents. There was the inner circle, which consisted mostly of the founders of YBI and their lieutenants. Then the lieutenants were responsible for having runners. These runners were, in the case of YBI, oftentimes minors that were looking to make money on the side. The strategy of using minors made YBI extremely powerful and difficult to take down. Federal law enforcement, in a hearing with members of Congress, discussed the success of this tactic. Because most of the members were of the organization were minors, efforts to penetrate and disband the group met with little success. Many young people in Detroit were attracted to the idea of YBI because it was a quick and relatively easy way to make money. The youth in YBI were able to afford expensive cars, jewelry, and clothes. They were not afraid to show off the success that they were able to have because of their part in the gang. People in YBI were known to wear Max Julien jackets, which was also known as the Young Boy jacket. However, not all life with the Young Boys was about the money and success from dope dealing. The wrecking crew, managed by Jones, was enforcement of the gang. Most teenagers involved in the gang could not just leave unless they left town, and the wrecking crew made sure that this message was clear to everyone working with the Young Boys. Violence was inherently a part of the Young Boys organization, and it was a way of keeping the Young Boys in line. It was common to hear that competitors of their organization were killed in gang violence because Butch Jones did not want YBI to have any competition. The products of YBI were branded different names that made them marketable. Jones claimed in his book that he would test the products with users that were known to him who could vouch for the quality of the products. It was a rule within YBI that the lieutenants and anyone in the crew was not allowed to touch the products. This allowed them to stay sober and attentive to anything happening around them. Overall, YBI functioned similar to any large corporation we see today, with the exceptions that the product they sold is an illegal substance and that there was violent retaliation for any movement against the gang. The organization in Detroit was seriously crippled in September 1982 when it was alleged that Butch Jones ordered the execution of Davis over a turf dispute. Davis was gunned down at the corner of Columbus and Lawton on Detroit's west side. A few months later, on December 7th, Raymond Peoples, Butch Jones, and 41 of YBI's top lieutenants were indicted, convicted, and later sentenced to long terms in prison. Many believe that because of Davis's death, none of his crew were indicted. After Peoples was released from the prison, he was shot dead as he sat in a car on the city's west side in 1985. The lieutenant that Davis sent to Boston, James Cooper, better known as Pep, followed the YBI blueprint and what he learned from his mentors, Dwayne Davis, Raymond Peoples, and Butch Jones in Detroit. He and his crew eventually took over the vast majority of that city's heroin trade. Pep came back to Detroit after Davis' death and took over what was left of YBI. They operated for about another 6 years, taking the group to another level until crack cocaine quickly surpassed heroin as the inner city's drug of choice. One of the members who came back from Boston with Pep was Stephen Seeley. Seeley is best known for being gunned down and killed as he sat in Whitney Houston's Bentley in front of a Boston club. In the car with him was Bobby Brown. Butch Jones was released after serving 12 years in federal prison. He was eventually indicted again on drug and murder charges. Jones cooperated with the federal authorities for a lesser sentence. Young Boys Incorporated is a subject of hundreds of newspaper articles, dozens of documentaries, and at least 2 published books. YBI, the autobiography of Butch Jones, and Bound by Honor, Torn by Greed, the true and untold story of Young Boys Incorporated. YBI's reputation and system of organization impacted and influenced drug gangs nationally during the 1980s and 1990s. Consequently, after their downfall, other black Detroit drug cartels copied their organizational structure. Many gangs such as Best Friends, Pony Down, Black Mafia Family, and the Chambers Brothers rose to prominence in the wake of the YBI and were featured together in a black entertainment television documentary series entitled American Gangster. Like, comment, sub, throw your thoughts and opinions in the comment section. I'll catch you on the next one. Much love, peace, blessings, and much gratitude.